what they had semantically learned and through episodes and experiences learned and formulate a new idea. I love my Aunt Mary. My father was this way. I remember this experience I had. I remember the book I read on this person, and they began to organize a new set of neurons firing in new patterns in new ways. And so that's the second way. The third way is that the brain is both a sender and a receiver. So by asking those questions, the brain tunes into a stream of consciousness, and that stream of consciousness now gives them insights and gives them ideas about a better way to be, and that's the spiritual aspect of ourselves. So it's the combination of all those things, but the key is that they're single-minded. They're not letting go of the ideal. And as they're doing this in the reinvention process, those gangs of neurons now that are firing in new ways are reinforcing a new mind. And so the principle in neuroscience is nerve cells that fire together wire together. So as they're firing the same thoughts every single day, they're wiring a new set of circuits that would literally become the platform of their new self. So they're unlearning the old self and they're relearning the new self. And change requires both. It requires breaking the habit of our repetitive thoughts and feelings and surrendering those, and then reinventing a new self, relearning a new self. And if we persist and we do it every single day, as I said earlier, it gets easier, because when you change the mind, you change the brain. And when the brain changes, then it changes the mind. So there's just a kind of a unifying principle that happens, that once we begin to get a little leverage and we get a little movement, you start noticing that the side effect of this process is you start to get happy, because you're no longer processing the same thoughts that are making you sick, right? Now, the research in neuroscience and biology right now tell us that we could actually change the brain by thinking, and that if we do it enough times, the body begins to respond ahead of the actual physical experience. And so if the brain and body begin to change ahead of the experience, it means then that the experience is actually happening. Which brings me to the fourth principle. When they were truly paying attention and truly focused, and they were rehearsing mentally this new ideal of themselves, they had long moments where they lost track of time and space.
Okay, now what does that mean in practice? They lost, what was it again? They lost
track of time.
Track of time. That sounds very esoteric. So,
okay, so
simple terms,
we do it all
mean?
the time. You know, when you drive down the road in your car and you just drove 50 kilometers or 60 miles, and you have no idea about the scenery that was passing. You weren't paying attention to the road. You weren't aware of your body.
But a lot of the time that's because I'm thinking.
They were actually thinking.
But isn't thinking normally has bad PR in these circles?
Okay, so good. So the technique of you spacing out while you're driving in your car, losing track of your body, not paying attention to the environment, and forgetting about time. Oh, you come back and you just realize, where were you? You just drove 50 kilometers and had no idea. Well, who's driving the car when that happens, right? But when we're truly paying attention and we're truly focused, the frontal lobe opens up a picture, and we begin to observe that picture. Now, most of us are thinking about our problems when we're driving in the car, and so we're reinforcing the circuitry of those problems. These people weren't doing that. They were thinking about a new way of life.
They were focused.
They were focused on a potential.
But they don't know exactly how they're going to get there. But I know you mentioned this as well. But they're focused on the result, or what they feel the result.
They were beginning to create a new ideal of themselves.
Right.
And in the process of doing that, according to functional brain scans, when we're paying attention, truly focused, there comes a moment when the frontal lobe turns on, and because it has connections to all other parts of the brain, the frontal lobe acts as a volume control, and it cools off the circuits in the brain that have to do with the body, feeling the body. It cools off the circuits, the strip that has to do with movement.
Yeah.
It cools off the circuits in the emotional centers. It cools off the visual cortex. It cools off all the other circuits so that nothing else is being processed.
Without being overridden in a way.
Right. The brain tunes out the environment, it tunes out the body, and it tunes out time. And the moment that happens, the thought becomes the experience in that moment. And the moment the thought becomes the experience, the brain upscales its hardware and tracks the thought as an experience, and the circuitry changes.
Right.
Now, if there is no activity in the sensory cortex or in the motor cortex or in the emotional centers or in the visual cortex, if the brain is no longer producing any activity there, then there is no mind there. So the parietal lobes that have to do with time and space, they cool off. And if they cool off, it's not like you're not thinking about time. There just is no time because the mind isn't there to process time. That moment when that happens is an illustrious moment because that's the moment that we have neurological and chemical changes that take place in the body. And the thought then is the experience. And the side effect of when that happens is we've just gone from living in a state of survival run by those strong addictive chemicals to a state of creation. And that's when, all of a sudden, when there is no body and there is no thing and there is no time, the side effect of that is people begin to experience a movement of energy. They start to feel joy. They start to feel lifted. And that new chemical response in the state of creation is the chemistry from the brain now that reconditions the body to a new mind. And all of a sudden, the body's getting a new chemical signal that's turning on new genes and turning off old genes, and they made their way. And the funny thing about it is when they were able to consistently do this, now, they began to look forward to it. It wasn't like, oh, God, I got to go do this. They were like, I can't wait, because when they got up, they felt better. They literally felt great.
Yeah.
And they reached a point after a period of time where they just said, I know that I'm healed. And, everybody said, well, let's go get a test. And they said, well, I'll get a test, but I know that I know. Well, how do you know? I know that I'm better. They knew. They knew it on an intrinsic level.
They also felt better as well.
Presumably. Oh, they also felt better, but they knew.
And that's often the most encouraging thing. When you feel you're making tangible progress, that makes you even more encouraged to actually do.
Absolutely.
Do what you're doing.
The feedback of feeling better, then all of a sudden we can associate what we did inside of us that produced this feeling outside of us. That's key, because the way we typically think is just the opposite. What is it out there? Like, what is that experience from the external world that's producing this internal chemical change?
Yes.
And that's called a memory. We pay attention to that person that makes us feel good. Well, that person doing that thing that produces this internal chemical change, we associate that person with this feeling. That's the Newtonian law. The other quantum law is, what is it that I'm changing inside of me that's producing the measurable effect outside of me, either in my body or in my life? That's taking the cart that's traveling and stopping it and turning it and making it move in the opposite direction. And that takes practice. It takes being engaged. This isn't a philosophical conversation that we're having right now. This is a practical conversation. This is, if you're about the business of change, you can't have dinner conversation and expect to get up as a different person. You got to do the work. You got to sit down there, and you got to make those measurable changes. And so my passion and my mission is that we know that the redundancy of our thinking and feeling, strong emotion creates disease. Why wait for the disease? Can we inspire people to make those changes before tragedy or trauma sets in?
And that, in a way, is how medicine is going. The more kind of cutting edge type of the holistic side is going. People are going for the checkups and they're finding what maybe they're missing or things that aren't functioning too well before they necessarily got any tangible signs of illness.
Sure.
And they're doing something about that. It may be taking supplementation, and in fact that just triggers something else I want